So I was going to bring you guys another video talking about the censorship push against Joe Rogan. We covered the Surgeon General recently calling as a member of the Biden administration for Spotify and all these social media platforms to stem the dissemination of his podcast because the Surgeon General doesn't like Joe Rogan's speech. And Jen Psaki, who has called for censorship before, recently doubled down on that call for censorship, saying that Spotify needs to do more against somebody like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, who, by the way, accurately pointed out that Jen Psaki herself has spread misinformation related to the virus. But then, when I was searching for the video so I could watch it, so I could absorb all the information, I got this suggestion from the H3 Podcast Highlights channel. And this video, first of all, just the title of this video had to be clicked on for me because this is ridiculous. I didn't even think you could title videos on YouTube like this anymore and get monetized, but I guess H3 has a better connection than I do, which, considering I have no connection, any connection would be better than I have. So this video with this title, which is incredibly personally insulting, which allegedly YouTube's terms of service is against, is published on his Podcast Highlights channel. And let me read the title for you so you understand what we're talking about. Quote, Tim Pool is a beta insecure loser. But even more surprising than this video being fully monetized with this title, which again should theoretically go up against YouTube's terms of service, is the fact that there's only 34,000 views on this video. That's insane. Ethan's Podcast Highlights channel, I remember, was generating millions of views per video, or at least hundreds of thousands of views, and he has over 1.6 million subscribers on this. So this podcast channel is dying. I didn't realize it was this bad for Ethan, and maybe this explains some of his toxic, negative behavior of late, because when you're losing everything, you start lashing out against people that you feel like are more successful. Now, we have a sponsor of this video. It's to shield you from the virtual nightmare that is Ethan Klein. We'll catch you on the other side of it, Virtual Shield transition. If you think technology today is bad for your online privacy, it's about to get a lot worse with this push towards virtual reality. As we progress closer and closer to VR, big tech is going to be able to monitor everything you see, you feel, and you do on the internet, even more so than they do right now. This is one of the reasons why I don't go online without using Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield can protect you from these sophisticated tracking mechanisms that big tech is using and developing further into the future. And it's pretty awesome. If you want that thing where you can go to another country virtually and go into Netflix or anything like that to get around region locks, they also got you on point with that. If you go to virtualshield.com/justice, you can get 50% off for your lifetime subscription. That's virtualshield.com/justice. Protect yourself in the real world and in the upcoming virtual world. So one of my biggest criticisms of H3H3 Productions of Ethan Klein actually has nothing to do with his politics. It has nothing to do with the positions that he holds, because honestly, Ethan Klein is not sophisticated in any of the positions that he holds, which is one of the reasons why we're going to go over this video. But my main criticism of him, and specifically his podcast, is that I don't find it entertaining. I don't think he's actually that good as a podcaster. He basically parlayed all of his audience that he built up over the time that he was doing his regular productions channel to the podcast, and because they were supporting him right away, he never had to go through the process of getting better at what he was doing. Now, he refined his commentary craft, that's 100% true, it's indisputable, he was insanely successful at that, but the podcast thing, he's just never had to improve. So the podcast is incredibly boring. All of the highlights of the podcast have been boring, and if not for the fact that he had so many friends to boost it up in the beginning, people would have noticed this earlier and not mistook the H3 podcast for a form of entertainment. And one of the things that you really pick up on when you actually sit down and watch one of these clips, which I feel like I haven't done in years without a specific purpose, is the bitterness and the angriness that is coming off of Ethan Klein throughout this whole experience, throughout this whole video. It's actually more sad than anything, so we're not really going to respond to any of the factual arguments put forward by Ethan because they're non-existent in this video. We're just going to document what is going on with this guy and maybe find a way to suggest some help for Ethan.
This was in response to, me calling Joe Rogan unhealthy.
Right.
I didn't talk about it on the show. It happened over the break. I made some jokes about Joe Rogan. He's not healthy. What can I say? The dude is jacked with, he's full up on steroids, human growth hormone. He literally eats only meat, red meat. He eats red
Wait,
meat.
no, he's not on that diet, is he?
He just recently announced he's going to eat only red meat and
He's doing
fruit.
the Jordan Peterson diet?
Yeah.
Oh, he's doing fruit.
Yeah, he's adding fruit to the mix.
Okay.
So one of the things that you will notice about this clip, other than the fact that it's boring, is that Ethan is incredibly bitter. This is a personal attack on the people that he's talking about, and he's just trying to smear them. And basically his smear tactic is, I think they're dumb or goofy in this area. In this case, it would be diet. Therefore, you shouldn't trust them as authorities in any other area, which is a weird fallacy, but okay. And also, you'll notice that Ethan is obsessed with declaring Joe Rogan unhealthy for some reason. I'm not really sure what this obsession is driven by, why Ethan feels the need to compare his health to a guy that's 18 years older than him, because Ethan, you should be in better health, in better shape than somebody like Joe Rogan. Also, you have younger kids than Joe Rogan. You should be thinking about yourself as a means to be around for your family going forward, instead of thinking about yourself as a way to throw up against another podcaster that you're angry about for reasons that you can't quite articulate.
Tim Pool, everybody.
YouTuber Ethan Klein calls Joe Rogan a piece of ish for vaccine misinformation. Rogan's fan hit back after Klein calls out how podcasters' logic makes no sense.
I appreciate you bringing back ish, by the way.
Well, Luke did.
Now, by the way, this guy, Nick, what's his name? Nick Fuentes, or is that someone else? Who's this guy? He's another, like...
I would be shocked if Nick Fuentes was on the show.
This guy's just as bad. I mean...
Yeah, I don't think it's him.
So I just wanted to highlight this moment because I thought it was incredibly funny, and it just goes to show you that Ethan Klein is completely out of touch and out of his element when he enters the political arena. He just mistook either Jack Posobiec or Luke Radowski for Nick Fuentes. So this guy is so uninformed about politics that he doesn't realize that Nick and Tim don't get along, and the likelihood of them appearing on the same show together, and that show being Timcast, maybe there's a sandbag instance that could happen in the future, is incredibly unlikely, near zero. But of course, he hears from Jank's nephew that all these different people are just like Nick Fuentes, and since Nick Fuentes is the most evil man on the internet.com, he uses that as a generic insult, just like every other generic insult that he could possibly wield. Again, totally lacking information, total confusion, total absurdity from Ethan Klein right off the bat. Let's move on to the next points that he needs to make that he thinks are very important.
Didn't even have the balls to stand by the ish he preaches. Now he's on his show talking about how
Are you
fat
really not
people
saying shit, you giant pussies, you stupid assholes? You know what? I shouldn't even say pussies. That's derogatory towards women. I'm going to start phasing that out.
Now look, I'm not going to make the case that you can never eat on a live broadcast. I'm not going to make the case that if you're doing a live show that sometimes you don't need a snack. But there's something extra obnoxious about just chewing directly into the microphone while you're theoretically doing a show that's supposed to entertain people. I don't need to hear that. Install a mute button. You got the money. You have a sophisticated podcast operation. You have employees. Can you not chew directly in my ears? It's bothering me, Ethan. Cut it out.
They're really just...
Cowards?
They're
turd, flaming turd bag.
Your alpha is avoiding saying curse words, naughty words, an alpha move? I don't think so. Seems weak. It's a baby.
So the next criticism or bit of commentary, again, I told you, there's not a lot of substance to anything Ethan does, is Ethan talking about how Tim Pool won't swear. Everybody knows Tim Pool won't swear because swearing can sometimes get you demonetized on YouTube. Now, I know Ethan can title his videos in a way that just smears people directly, that personally attacks those people for whatever reason, whatever connection he has to YouTube. But for the rest of us, for the most part, we do not have that luxury. So Tim Pool doesn't swear on its live broadcasts because he knows his live views go up after the show airs, but that video could get demonetized if he doesn't enforce strict standards while he's on air. Also, it's a good idea to not let your guest or not want your guest to get out of hand because that could ultimately end up negatively impacting the show. When you actually have people on, people with different ideas, people with different perceptions, people who say outlandish things from time to time, having some restrictions beforehand is a good way to secure your platform. So that is why they don't have the swearing. That's why when you actually go on Tim's show, and I've been on once, he gives you some things that he does not want you to say because he thinks they might be a problem. None of the things were anything that I was interested in saying. It's because there are restrictions and there are people like Ethan Klein that advocate for censorship against people they disagree with politically. Again, the left wing, they're allowed to say whatever they want, but the rules actually apply to people on the right or people who think they're on the middle or whatever. So that's why there's no swearing in Tim Pool's videos. But again, it's all about personal insults, and it immediately goes to Ethan questioning the manhood of Tim Pool, which personal projection, you know, pretty obvious.
Your alpha is avoiding saying curse words, naughty words, an alpha move? I don't think so. Seems weak. It's a baby. I shouldn't even say pussies. That's derogatory towards women. I'm gonna start phasing that out. Your alpha is avoiding saying curse words, naughty words, an alpha move? I don't think so. I'm gonna start phasing that out.
So again, you just get the hint that this is all personal for Ethan. It's all personal attacks. He feels personally insulted, so he's lashing out at the people that hurt his feelings. And it's really weird that he's using the alpha language. Well, actually, it's not weird. It's a phenomenon that we talked about in the past, where these people on the left think it's clever. They think it's actually intelligent to try to flip language and use it against the right wing. Like, oh, I'm owning you. Like, how many left wingers have you heard quote Ben Shapiro's facts over feelings to a different right winger that wasn't Ben Shapiro, as if they all make those same exact points or say that iconic line that's associated with Ben Shapiro? So he says, Tim, you're not an alpha because you're not allowing swearing, even though I can get away with way more things on my channel than you can on your channel. You're not an alpha, as I talk about how I'm not going to use the word for female anatomy because I don't want people to be offended. Yes, that's actually in the clip as well.
This is typical gamma male rage against an alpha male. Right?
Gamma male
rage. So me criticizing Joe Rogan, spreading COVID misinformation, is gamma male rage, which I didn't know what a gamma male was, but apparently is a gamma male, it's even lower than a beta, or it's higher than a beta?
I think it's in most cases lower, but I mean, that doesn't really sound like Ethan.
I mean, well, I've been married for like fucking 10 years, and I'm about to have my second child. I don't think...
So Jack basically says that Ethan is lashing out against somebody who's higher on the totem pole than him. And again, this is something that really bothers H3 Productions. And he goes on this long spiraling rant where he brings in his producer to talk about this. And he's like, I don't understand why they're bringing up my manhood. And he tries to justify it, but also tries to say it's ridiculous. So he's trying to meet this standard while at the same time saying he doesn't agree with this standard, which doesn't make any sense at all. And also, if you interpret what Jack Posobiec is saying, it's quite reasonable because Joe Rogan is the #1 podcast and Ethan can't crack 40,000 views on an episode highlight that used to be on a channel that would get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views. So obviously he's trying to target somebody that is higher up, even if we just look in terms of podcast listens.
I mean, it's based in their own insecurity. That's the only thing it's based on.
I mean, this whole alpha male thing all started, I believe, because of like one study 30 years ago about hierarchies in wolves, and it was completely discredited because the study was based on wolves in captivity, and their behavior in the wild doesn't actually follow this whole like alpha thing anyways. So it's all based on
also we're not wolves,
right? Exactly.
Our
it's
social
another
structures are a little more complicated
in a very specific circumstance that has been widely discredited.
Are there gamma?
So then we go into Ethan's mass producer talking about how the alpha wolf study has been debunked, and all these people are basing everything on alpha wolves, even though this doesn't make sense and their original study has been debunked. Now, #1, what is actually being said doesn't actually literally have to be biologically analogous to humans for you to understand the concept, and even the wolf study, if it's been debunked in the future, the arguments from it are still perfectly fine. And there's also other animals that have a top male and a top female. Horses are animals that we typically tame, and we do so by taming the top ranking officials in the horse community. Yes, I said top ranking officials and horse community because I thought that would be funny. And then the other horses would follow. And even in captivity, you have to get control over the leader so that you can get the others to follow. Now, you can actually do it one by one in a less efficient way, but this is typically how we work on controlling animals in order to use them as beasts of burden, which helped human civilization evolve. So again, this doesn't have to necessarily be literally true of humans for you to be able to draw the analogy, and more importantly, the purpose of language is for you to communicate information in an efficient way, and everybody understands what Jack is saying, regardless of whether or not the 30-year-old wolves in captivity study is actually debunked.
Anyway, his hobby here is saying that I have gamma male rage against alphas like Joe Rogan, by the way. who literally... Is Joe Rogan an alpha? I mean, dude, what are we talking about here? I'm not... The dude is so insecure, his nipples are like the size of the Eiffel Tower because he pumps himself so full of human growth hormone and testosterone because he can't handle the thought of aging appropriately.
They won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, his blood might have more alpha brain in it than actual, like, red blood cells, but that doesn't make him alpha. That just means he's taking a bunch of weird supplements.
Ooh.
So the next thing you'll notice about the attacks that Ethan levies against Joe Rogan, other than the fact that his main points are just not rooted in truth, is that Ethan is obsessed with attacking Joe Rogan's appearance, and this is likely due to the fact that he feels personally insecure about his own appearance. And honestly, I feel genuinely bad for Ethan in that regard. Now, he can do things to improve his appearance, change his outside so that he feels more confident on the inside, but overall, it actually must suck to feel that insecure. This guy's successful, he's married, he's got kids, he has employees, all the markers of success, but he's still worried about his appearance, and part of the reason why is he's put on weight in recent years, and people, including men, can become sensitive about their weight. Now, that's no excuse to go lash out against other people, but you understand where this is coming from, and why Ethan keeps harping on this when you just look at Ethan from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, versus now, and the fact that people on the internet can really get under your skin, and they keep pointing out the differences between Ethan in the past and Ethan in the future. And he's talked about weight issues before and all this other stuff. It's just really odd that he has to stack his own appearance against a guy who, again, is 18 years older than him in order to feel better about himself or to cover for not feeling good about himself. Also, he has to have his employees tell him that he's alpha, which is just awkward in every way. I'm going to play that clip for you so you can hear it.
If we're talking about social sexual hierarchy, I have a good job, right? I have a wife that I've been in a loving relationship with. I have a family. So I'm fat, basically. Does being fat make me a beta or gamma?
Well, also, like, publicly calling out another person with a huge platform, a bigger one than your own, and going in on them, I mean... Again, I don't think any of this is real anyways, but couldn't you argue that that is alpha energy? Like, you're not backing down?
I never use the alpha, beta, or any of that stuff on this channel because I find the people who use that, especially the people who are most prone to using that prolifically, obnoxious. But the fact that they're trying to dismiss it while at the same time trying to use it, while at the same time Ethan is having his employee try to puff him up using that same language, lets me know that this stuff bothers him, which again is ridiculous because as Ethan says, and he should think about, he has a successful wife, long-term relationship, and children. He should be happy and secure in his position. He has a very expensive house. He's had in the past a very successful podcast. So Ethan, chill out. You're fine. Stop trying to lash out at others because all that you have doesn't feel like enough.
Again, my favorite part of this, without knowing anything about me, he doesn't engage with my statement at all. He is completely sidestepping what I think is a totally valid, correct point.
Now look, there's a whole other 12 minutes of this video that I'm not really going to get to because honestly, this is really boring. It lacks all entertainment value in my opinion. But here's the thing. Ethan is so obsessed with Rogan, it is ridiculous, and he's so obsessed with this idea that people don't want to address his underlying points, despite the fact that his underlying points are all inaccurate and non-points and contradictory. So let's have Ethan lay out his premise that he laid out on Twitter that I've addressed in the past and multiple different people have addressed in the past so you can hear why he's wrong.
What I think is a totally valid, correct point, which is that Joe Rogan, in an ultimate beta move after preaching about masculinity and just, not getting vaccinated and all this bullshit, instead of just riding out the virus like he should do, like he preaches he should do, he literally has a doctor on call to give him experimental drugs and every freaking drug under the sun to treat it. That's beta energy, bro. Submissive. Just take the vaccine at that point, you beta ass.
So the setup for Ethan's next claim is that Joe Rogan, who was preaching about masculinity, and during the course of that preaching about masculinity, was telling people not to get the vaccine, is already wrong. He did not do this. Rogan did not discourage people directly from getting the vaccine. In fact, he said you can get the vaccine if you want, and he even recommended it for age groups that are more vulnerable to the virus. The only thing that Joe Rogan ever said, which is accurate, is that healthy 20-year-olds don't have to worry about the same issues related to the virus as people with pre-existing conditions or people that are elderly or people that are overweight. That's pretty obvious. That's pretty basic. Ethan doesn't know that because Ethan gets his information from the mainstream media. He just quotes it uncritically. And even after all this time, he's so resistant to information, he still doesn't realize that this is the #1 criticism against that first point. Then his second point is just inherently contradictory.
Instead of just riding out the virus like he should do, like he preaches he should do, he literally has a doctor on call to give him experimental drugs and every freaking drug under the sun to treat it. That's beta energy, bro. Submissive. You know, just take the vaccine at that point, you beta ass.
So again, here, notice that Ethan is still talking about alphas and betas and being submissive and all these other things that are stuck in his mind that are all about his perception of himself as a man. And then he follows it up by saying that Joe Rogan, based on his original premise, which was false, that Joe Rogan is telling people to be a man and not get the vaccine, when he got COVID, shouldn't have taken all these treatments because Joe Rogan also said you have to tough it out and not take treatments. That is just not true. That's not based in reality, and it runs contradictory to other claims that people make, including Ethan Klein, about Joe Rogan, that Ethan is even starting to make in this sentence about Joe Rogan taking and promoting all these insane treatments.
He literally has a doctor on call to give him experimental drugs and every freaking drug under the sun to treat it. That's beta energy, bro.
Look, I know it's difficult to actually be informed about the topics that you're talking about. I know it's difficult to actually do more than read a headline about what somebody actually said, and sometimes you have to read the full article, or better yet, or I mean worse yet, actually listen to what they actually said. But Joe Rogan never said that you shouldn't get treatment. On top of that, it is inherently contradictory to say that Joe Rogan is promoting terrible treatments, inaccurate treatments, crazy treatments, while at the same time telling everybody to be men and not take any treatments. That doesn't make any sense.
Just doing the little white power symbol, that's
White
all.
power, white power. That's a good guy. Tim Pool, are you comfortable having people who flash white power signs when photographed? Well, he is engaged. He's married. That's good. Lady Macbeth over there.
Hey guys, editing Sean here. So I was going to not go into anything further in the video, but then I realized something. I would be doing you guys a great disservice if I didn't point out that Ethan Klein thinks the OK sign is a white power sign. Yep, it's real. Also, way to take a cheap shot at somebody's wife because you disagree with them politically. I'm sure you would be perfectly okay with that, Ethan. I know part of this is that Joe Rogan saw somebody who was actually wearing a mask outside, a double mask, and you got mad because he was like, that's ridiculous, and that turned out to be your wife. But yeah, go out of your way to do what bothered you. Got it.
Looks like he even has a kid, so...
Okay, so he's up there.
He's got the proof.
Sexual hierarchy.
He might be above alpha. He's transcended.
White power.
And this is what happens when you have somebody who's not very politically informed team up with somebody who has an agenda, who learned from his uncle, of course we're talking about Cenk's nephew, about taking the worst possible interpretation of what your opponent says and just repeating it over and over and over again until you convince yourself and try to convince the audience that it's true. That's what Ethan Klein is doing right here. Even though what he's saying is inherently in conflict, even though what he's saying doesn't make sense on any level, Ethan just repeats it over and over and over again because he thinks it's a good argument to say that Joe Rogan shouldn't have got treatment, because he heard so many people in the left wing say that Joe Rogan shouldn't have got treatment based on this quote that they can never find or produce because it doesn't exist.
But we should also point out that this is some of the stupidest advice given out by Ethan Klein that absolutely makes no sense. You're telling Joe Rogan not to take medicine that a doctor is telling him to take?
This is the paradox of what he said. Ethan Klein is not a medical doctor.
Oh my fuck, these people are
You didn't
so
say
dumb.
that he shouldn't take it.
No, I was speaking rhetorically because I was like, if you're such a man,
right,
and you're telling people not to get vaccinated and just ride that out because it's like apparently not dangerous, then why did you get all this treatment? I didn't say don't get treated.
Like I said, Joe Rogan said if you're around 20 years old and healthy, then you don't necessarily need the vaccine because the risk of COVID is not as high for somebody in that range. This is statistically true. Now you can still make the argument that they should get the vaccine if you're actually capable of making that argument, which Ethan Klein is not. but you can't say it's not true. And you can't extrapolate that to say that Joe Rogan is telling everybody not to get any treatments while at the same time pushing dangerous treatments. It doesn't make any sense. What you're saying is ridiculous, Ethan, and this is why people are not on board with your arguments, because you're not making good arguments, you're not making them in good faith, and it seems like you're doing this to get attention for your dying channel. And it seems like you're also doing this because you're bitter and angry at these people, possibly due to the fact that you think that they're succeeding and that somehow is taking audience away from you. Maybe you have this zero-sum worldview because you're teaming up with a bunch of left-wingers who have this zero-sum worldview. I don't know about that. That's just speculation. And it also seems like you're very insecure about yourself as a man, despite the fact that you've been very financially successful, you have a popular career, you're well known, you live in a nice house, you have a family, a dedicated wife. You should be happy. So maybe deal with the reasons why you're not happy rather than trying to project them onto somebody else. Maybe deal with your issues with your own appearance rather than attacking a guy 18 years older than you who's obviously in better physical shape than you, because that makes you feel better about yourself.
Tim Pool, what is wrong with you, bro? You literally have people who flash white power signs and then act like you're just some dude. You're just sitting across from a dude who actively flashes white power when photographed with his family, and you're like, yeah, this guy has legitimate views.
Look, I'm not sure what to do with Ethan at this point. I'm a big believer that fame and money are magnifiers of pre-existing personalities. They don't turn you into a bad person. They don't make you a bad guy. And I think what ended up happening was Ethan got success and a lot of praise for criticizing people from a position of alleged moral superiority. And now that he's been more successful and he started to get into politics, he has this unearned sense of moral superiority, and that is preventing him from ever admitting that he's wrong, ever acknowledging fault, ever acknowledging that he's just inaccurate in what he's saying, because all the people that are opposing him must be like those people who left comments that were supportive of the pranksters that he would criticize for doing fake pranks. So in a way, while I do think criticizing Ethan is a worthy endeavor from time to time, what you're doing when you criticize the personality type that he currently holds is you're basically fueling the fire. You're basically giving him a greater sense of unearned moral superiority, because he's like, look at all the backlash. These are the people that I need to fight against. That just proves that I'm working. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about Ethan Klein. Till next time.